What's happening, folks? Back for another AHA demo, as well as a very sleepy Luca. And yes, we're returning for the demo of the title track for Memorial Beach 1993. Notice I said Memorial Beach correctly this time. And yes, I like the title track. I've come to appreciate it even more than when I first went through this album. I think it's very reflective of the sonic shift apparent by this point in the 90s. I suppose I've said that about a lot of tunes on this album, but really, I think this album represents a notable departure from the earlier dance floor, keyboard dominant sounds of their 80s albums, and certainly in relation to Hunting High and Low and Scoundrel Days. But yes, it has a down-tempo, heavier feel, but also it sounds a bit like freeform jazzy, not overly jazzy in that it's not, sort of swanky little piano runs and so on, but it definitely has a more open-air, natural instrument, free-flowing feel with a bit of weight, with a bit of heft to it. And yes, ultimately, I recognize that there's lots of ways to take some of the lyrics in their songs, but it feels like this one relates to a relationship that has gone awry or is in some ways not in a state that it was before, but there's maybe a sense or an attempt to recapture the feelings of the origins of it by going to Memorial Beach. So it definitely feels like there's a suggestion of the passage of time, a changing of conditions, but perhaps there is in some sense an attempt to turn back around and recapture or revitalize the experiences, or maybe just to relive them in memory. I suppose it might not be an attempt to actually have a renaissance of the relationship, but given the title of the beach, Memorial, and given the idea of thinking about the way things began, it's perhaps more about connecting with the past through memory and perhaps experiencing those emotions again, even if they're not going to come back in a more literal sense. In any case, I do enjoy the album track, and I'll be curious to hear how the demo may have developed between this and the final version. So let's give it a listen. This is the demo for Memorial Beach from the album of the same name by AHA, 1993. Similar, but already, I feel like, a bit different.
I pace the length of my unmade room in times of change. My bags are packed, guess I'm leaving the womb into the rain. We never found a place to hide. Some peace of mind, God knows we tried, yeah. Toes in the sand, a seductive sway. Ooh, nothing better, babe. Across the bay, Sarasota way, we held together. We never found a place to hide. Some peace of mind, God knows we tried. into the down to Memorial Beach, where things began. Honey days and nights without sleep, lost in the sand. We never found a place to hide, some peace of mind. Oh, God knows we tried, yeah. We never found a place to hide, some peace of mind. God knows we tried. Oh.
That's great, and as I hear it on this first listen, two perhaps differences stand out more than anything else. One, I feel like the balance, if not necessarily the composition of the tune, feels a bit different. It's in a very similar place as the album version, but it did feel like that characteristic I talked about in advance, being a bit jazzy, a bit freeform, sort of the swanky piano lines. It feels like that was enhanced a little bit more in this demo, so perhaps it was made into a bit more, not solemn, but a bit less free and flowing, a bit more heavy and emotional in the final version, or at least that's how it struck me now. And Morton's vocals, I feel like they were a bit deeper, a bit heavier. I didn't listen to the album track in advance of this, but my recollection is that he perhaps sings a bit higher, a bit more typical Morton in the final version of the song, whereas here he almost sounds a bit like Elvis at a couple points, which I don't know people's opinions about Elvis and his singing. I know there are, generally speaking, a wide range of opinions on the King, as he is sometimes called, but I say that in a positive way, in that he had a bit of that really like deep charisma to his voice in a couple moments where it felt like, oh, like isn't that a bit deeper than the line in the album track? So I feel like his vocal performance was perhaps a bit distinct compared to the final version, but in general it's again that natural instrument, much more open and flowing, less drum machine driven. And indeed, I was thinking as I listened to this, I really enjoy that almost marching style drumming rhythm. The percussive rhythm is very steady and regimented, not in a heavy, like, plodding marching manner, but at least it has that, like I said, regimented and very precise and constant and, what's the right word? I was going to say repetitive. That sounds maybe like a critique. I didn't mean it that way, but a very coordinated manner, which, you know, if you're marching, it is very regimented and coordinated, so it felt like that percussive rhythm really stood out on this listen. And as you perhaps noticed when I smiled a couple times, those yeahs at the end of the, I think, chorus, or is it the end of the verses, but there's a couple moments where Morton does a yeah to finish off the lines. And, you know, different singers have different vocalizations or typical, like, word shouts that are used to put a bit of a punch or accent on the normal line of the verse or the chorus. and just something about him giving those in his lower register I really enjoyed. So yeah, ultimately it's a good song whether you're talking the demo or the final version, but I feel like, with subtle differences, this is in a very similar place, but I enjoyed it as much as the album tunes or the final version of the track. So a very good demo and an indication that even as they were preparing to workshop this tune for the album, it started in a very good place. So once again, a cool experience to go through these demos and the extended versions and just get a larger 360 perspective on the albums, or rather the AHA journey overall. So once again, looking forward to hearing what people have to say. Let me know, and I will see you next time. Peace.